Good morning, a warm welcome to you. Sage here for Kalkine TV, reporting to you live from Sydney, and you're watching the Global Markets Roundup. Let's dive into some of the key highlights and happenings from yesterday, starting with the US market. The US government borrowing costs advanced for a sixth week on Monday, hurting the tech stocks as investors bet on rising interest rates, while three-year high oil prices ignited the energy sector. And the US indices were mixed, with the industrials heavy Dow Jones index outperforming the Nasdaq index of tech stocks. And Dow Jones closed higher on Monday, September 27th, pulled up by gains in the financials and energy stocks, while Nasdaq Composite and S&P 500 retreated as losses in technology shares deepened. The S&P 500 fell 0.28%, while the Dow Jones rose 0.21%, and the Nasdaq Composite fell 0.52%, and the small cap Russell 2000 was up 1.46%. Investors kept away from growth stocks, and instead they appeared to have turned their focus on value and cyclical stocks after the Federal Reserve's economic assessment last week. And the central bank gave a tentative timeline of November for stimulus withdrawal and a rate hike by next year after the end of their two-day monthly meeting last Wednesday. And meanwhile, the US Census Bureau said on Monday that orders for durable goods exceeded the pre-COVID levels in August. Orders for manufactured durable goods rose by 1.8% to $263.5 billion in August, after increasing 0.5% in July. This signalled a rise in business investment and consumer spending. Energy and financial stocks were the biggest gainers on the S&P 500 index Monday, and the technology and healthcare stocks were the laggards. 6 of the 11 index segments stayed in the positive territory. And now let's move on to the futures and commodities market. Gold futures were down 0.11%. Silver increased by 0.95%, while copper fell 0.14%. And the Brent oil futures increased by 1.81%, reaching $78.63 per barrel, and WTI crude was up 1.93%. Let's take a look over the bond market. And the 30-year Treasury bond yields were up 0.69%, while the 10-year bond yields rose 1.91%. And meanwhile, the US dollar futures index increased by 0.09%. And now we'll take a small break, but stay tuned as I'll be back with the Asian and Australian market updates.
Hi there, James Preston for Kalkine TV. Are you into gaming and virtual reality? Does AI and the endless possibilities it entails capture your interest? Or are you constantly trawling through the web to try and discover the latest updates and innovations in the tech space? Well, let us do the work for you. From the latest product launches to shocking affairs on the World Wide Web, exclusive interviews and information about the top companies like Apple and Google, to brand new tech startups vying for your attention. Kalkine's Tech Beat has the latest in what matters in the world of technology. Join me every single Thursday on the Tech Beat, exclusive to Kalkine TV.
Welcome back. Sage here. You're watching the Global Markets Roundup show by Kalkine TV. And Europe's Stoxx 600 index ended lower on Monday as declines in the tech stocks offset gains in banks and energy, while German shares hit 10-day highs as the federal election outcome reduced the chances of a left-wing coalition forming a government. And Germany's blue-chip DAX rose 0.3%, leading gains among the regional indexes, while the pan-European Stoxx 600 index fell 0.2%. The London markets traded in the green zone, driven by the banking and energy shares. Rolls-Royce Holdings shares surged by about 10.43% after the company received a contract to provide the power plant for the B-52 Stratofortress under the commercial engine replacement program. United Utilities Group shares dropped by around 1.26% after it mentioned the higher first half revenue and targeted efficiencies got offset by higher underlying operating costs. And the Eurozone 10-year bond yields rose to their highest in almost 3 months, on Monday as a brief decline after Germany's election gave way to concerns that the major central banks could tighten the monetary policy sooner rather than later. And Germany's bond yield rose to roughly 3-month peaks at 0.19%. The Japanese shares settled slightly lower on Monday, giving up early gains, driven by the cyclical stocks as investors booked profits after a sharp rally this month, while caution also prevailed ahead of a change in political leadership. The Nikkei share average closed down 0.03% after rising as much as 0.5%. And meanwhile, the broader Topix slipped to 0.14%. Shanghai's shares fell on Monday as analysts worried that a recent power crunch, which has curbed factory production, is weighing on economic growth. And the blue chips rose, led by consumer staples ahead of the National Day holiday. The blue chip CSI 300 index rose 0.6%, while the Shanghai Composite Index lost 0.8%. And South Korean stocks rose on Monday as foreign investors bought local shares for an 8th straight session, although a ban by China on crypto trading weighed on the market. And the benchmark Kospi KS11 rose 0.27% by 6:32 a.m. GMT. A number of ASX-listed shares are scheduled to pay dividends on Tuesday. The companies include Altium Limited, Amcor, CDI, Coles Group Limited and Evolution Mining. Similarly, Energy One Limited will go ex-dividend on Tuesday. The Australian and New Zealand dollars rallied on Monday as gains in global stocks pointed to an improvement in risk sentiment, while a surge in oil prices led the resource sector higher. The Aussie gained almost 0.4%, having found solid support around $0.7220 last week. A break above the resistance around $0.7316 would suggest the bear trend of the last couple of weeks was over for now. And moving on to the bond yields and dollar, 10-year Treasury yields last fell to yield 1.4889% from 1.461% late on Friday. And meanwhile, the dollar index rose 0.146%, while the euro was down 0.15%. And Chinese iron ore futures continue to rebound for a third straight session, and the benchmark iron ore futures on the Dalian Commodity Exchange finished up 3.5% to 703 yuan a tonne. And thanks for joining us in that report. That's all for now. Do keep watching Kalkine TV for more market updates. Sage signing off.